The reason you got back in the airplane, whether it was the second mission or the 50th, was that's what you were trained to do. I wasn't brave. I just did the job that I was trained to do, and I did it well. And we were extremely well trained, I think. From the time I was about 7 or 8 years old, I always wanted to fly. And I knew that I was pretty sure I would never have enough money to do that. So when the war came along, I thought, this is my chance. My folks could have kept me out since I was an only child. But in fact, we didn't know about it. I didn't know about that till I was in the service. That certain people could be excluded, like if there were 4 or 5 sons, they could keep one at home. I don't think most people knew what it meant. I remember my dad, I was with my mother and dad at my grandpa and grandma's house in St. Paul. And I remember my dad saying, well, he said, that won't last more than 6 months. Now, I think the reason he said that, I'm an only child, and I don't think he wanted to think about me going off to war. But I think a lot of people thought it wouldn't last very long. I graduated at the end of May in 1942 and then went in the Air Force in November of 42. I went on and was commissioned as second lieutenant, and I got my aerial navigator's wings in February of 44 when I was 19. Math was always my favorite subject in high school, and that's how I chose to be a navigator. I remember one day when we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and did a 10-mile forced march, and then they threw us in the swimming pool with all our clothes on to see if we could swim with all our clothes on, because a lot of people thought we'd probably go to the Pacific. And then we went to school all day, and I had leave that night, and I went out and danced for 3 hours afterwards. But you know, when you're 19 years old, you can do that. Then I left there and went to Sioux City, Iowa. That's where I met my crew, and that's the first time I saw a B-17. And let me tell you, for a country kid from White Bear, Minnesota, that was a big machine, and full of all kinds of things that I'd never seen before. You know, you're assigned to a 10-man crew, and we became just like brothers, 10 brothers, very close. 6 of the men on the crew were enlisted men and 4 officers, but that didn't make any difference. We associated together, we did things together, and we really got well acquainted. My first mission was to Wiener Neustadt, a suburb of Vienna, Austria. There was a oil refinery there. And I remember on the way to the target, we were probably 100 miles from the target, we saw the first flak, the first ground fire. And the way you flew your first mission was your crew, the left seat pilot flew in the right seat, and they had an experienced pilot in the left seat. And I called up to the pilot and I said, "What are those black puffs in the air?" He said, "That's flak." Man, as we got close to the target, you could walk on this stuff. It was so thick. Flying to the target, you got to a place called the IP, the initial point, which was somewhere between 8 and 20 minutes from the target. And that's where you open the bomb bay doors, and that's where the bombardier took over flying the airplane. It was hooked up to the bomb site. And when you flew, from the time you opened the bomb bay doors, there was no evasive action that could be taken. You had to fly straight and level because you're getting lined up on the target. And so the flak, the ground fire, and ground fire was artillery guns, 88 millimeter and 105 millimeter. And there were probably 1,200 flak guns. So they could put up a terrific amount of flak, and they'd fill the area that you were going to fly through. They knew exactly the altitude you were at because the contrails from the hot gases coming off the airplane would make those contrails, so they could tell exactly what altitude you were at. I saw a couple planes shot down. Before we got to the target, I saw one plane shot down, and that was very unusual because as the 10 guys bailed out, an Me-109, a German fighter plane, went around and picked off each one of them. And it was unusual because we had been briefed on that mission by a British colonel, and he said, "Be sure not to shoot a German parachutist." Well, when I get back, I told the people when they debriefed me, I said, "Boy, if I see a German guy bailed out, he's going to get a pants full of lead from me." My 8th mission was to Budapest, Hungary, and we bombed railroad yards. When we got there, we were flying at 23,000 feet, and there was a bank of clouds above us and one below us. The one above us, there were German bombers above that, dropping bombs on us. Well, the group commander decided to circle the target and go down under the layer of clouds that was under us. So we circled for 20 minutes and went in at 13,000 feet. Well, 20 minutes, the flak was just intensive. It was just, now 20 minutes doesn't seem very long, but when they're shooting at you, it's like an eternity. I had a set of maps, you know, a set of maps in a briefcase that thick, so that's what I sat on, because that'd stop a lot of flak. Well, we went in at 13,000 feet, and over the target, we had one engine shot out, number 3 engine. And so when we came off the target, we could not keep up with the rest of the group. And we were called what was called a cripple. And that's where the German fighters got after you. And an Me-109 and 3 Focke-Wulf 190s jumped us. And they knocked out engine number 1, so we had 2 out. We probably wouldn't have made it, but about the time they got that number 1 engine, we called for help, and 4 P-38s came, and they chased the Germans off. Now, we're down to about 10,000 feet, and we got to go back over those Alps. You know, we're north of the Alps. So I charted a course around any mountain peaks, so we would, and we did make it back. We were a couple hours late, but we made it back. That airplane had 30 holes in it this big from German fighters, the 20mm shells, and about 300 holes that big from the flak. 2 engines out, and what was marvelous, in 2 weeks, the ground crew had that plane. They patched all those holes, put 2 new engines on, and that airplane was ready to fly again in 2 weeks. But the whole war was that way, you know. The guys on ships did a great job. The men on the ground did a great job. And the men and the people at home here, the women built a lot of things. And we always had a lot. We had extra airplanes, extra engines, lots of gasoline and parts. And it was a marvelous effort by everybody. You know, there were 16 million men in the military at that time. That was 10% of the population of the United States. Population of the United States was only 160 million then. So it was a great effort by everybody to win that war. I finished 50 missions 6 months before I could legally buy a drink.